Every day, over 17,000 crimes are committed in the UK.
The demand was for £5 million.
They were getting deeper and deeper into this guy's trap.
Up against brick walls and denials.
There were no leads, no evidence.
This was going to be a mountain to climb.
What does it take to catch the criminals?
I knew that I had to be relentless to build my case.
An eye for detail.
There you can see the unique number.
And true determination.
I wanted to fight for her to get the justice that she deserved.
It's the uncovering of this one clue.
I have a really good, clear picture of the cat.
That finally solves the mystery.
It's just fantastic. Everything has come together for you, and that was the moment of proof.
Putting the criminals that affect the lives of innocent Britons behind bars.
We will find you. We will prosecute you.
Today, how can a plastic bag heat sealer convict an internet drug trafficker?
We realised the drugs would be packaged up in a heat seal bag, then into the Jiffy envelope, and then posted out courtesy of Royal Mail.
But first, a casual chat with a criminal and a map join the dots to catch 3 burglars terrorising a neighbourhood.
A nighttime burglar, all dressed in a balaclava, is a red rag to a bull to a policeman.
Detective Sergeant Mick Randall is in charge of one of the largest crime squads in London. But a series of terrifying nighttime burglaries would haunt him and local residents.
When we took the case on, there were probably between 6 and 10 burglaries a night. So most of them were between 2 and 4:30 in the morning. I remember being called in by the Detective Chief Inspector, and it was decided that this couldn't carry on.
At least 50 burglaries a week are being committed in this one area of southwest London.
Wimbledon, whilst it has the famous Wimbledon tennis court and the Wimbledon village, it's also got a darker side as well. And it's suffered from a lot of burglaries and a lot of drug crime. But the manner in which these nighttime burglaries were being carried out were so disturbing that the residents of Wimbledon were terrified.
With this sudden increase in nighttime crime, the pressure's on Mick and his squad to protect the public.
Nighttime burglars are an unusual breed, but we had 3 of them, all working independently and all working in particular parts of Wimbledon, each with their own operating method.
To help break down the overwhelming crimes, first Mick identifies the different types of burglar they're dealing with.
There was one set of burglaries which stood out right from the start, and that was a burglar that we called the shock and awe burglar. He just smashes his way into a premises in the dead of night that the occupants of the house are fast asleep. They're just after a handbag left in the kitchen, usually just enough to be able to get the next fix. However, most nighttime burglars are creepers who are very skilled, very forensically aware, and very capable of sneaking around houses and gardens. They are not worried about security systems. They're looking to enter the house by the quietest way possible.
The second burglar is one of these creeper types.
This was a very successful nighttime creeper. He had never been seen, and some of the burglaries he actually committed, the occupants didn't know that they'd even had anything stolen until days afterwards when they realised that something had been taken.
But it's the third burglar, another creeper, who's really worrying Mick.
Probably the most unusual out of the 3. This individual had been disturbed in a number of people's houses in the dead of night, mostly female occupants. He was more interested in the thrill of being in the house than actually what he took. He basically was a very scary creature. He had a balaclava. We called him the Ninja. Nighttime burglar, all dressed in a balaclava, is a red rag to a bull to a policeman. I probably was most concerned with him. However, we knew we had to arrest all three.
It's easier said than done. Mick's patch in Wimbledon is huge, with countless different places to hide.
It was quite clear that this was going to be a big mountain to climb. Whilst we were a big crime squad, we would need a lot more people to cover this massive area, sort of 5 or 6 square miles, all crisscrossing with alleyways, railways and open areas that we would have to manage.
What didn't assist was that professionalism of the burglars meant that we had no forensic information at all. We had no fingerprints. And so we had very little to go on.
Mick gets the team to painstakingly pick over hundreds of old cases, hunting for any possible leads.
Going back and looking at the scores and scores of burglaries that had occurred for the past year wasn't an easy thing to do. Uniform officers who we would go back to see and ask them, you were at this burglary when it came out at 4 o'clock in the morning, what did you see? And the same answer came back time and time again. We were at that premises within seconds and there was just no sign of the burglar.
Mick notices all 3 burglars have one thing in common. They suddenly disappear into the night. But he doesn't know how. And the nightly break-ins and 999 calls show no let-up.
I was a very proud detective, and at the end of the day, I wanted to be in charge of a burglary squad that was getting on top of the burglaries. We were losing the battle at this time. How were they missing? How were they not catching these burglars?
After several months of burglaries, Mick's no closer to catching the thieves. But a chance conversation with a prisoner leaving custody changes everything.
At the time these burglaries were occurring, we were conducting intelligence debriefs of prisoners that were arrested at Wimbledon Police Station.
They didn't leave without having a chat with one of my team. How's it going? I haven't seen you there for a long time. Whatever it be, small talk. But out of small talk sometimes comes some really important information.
It's during one of these low-key chats with a prisoner that Mick's ears prick up.
I was taken aback by what he said. He told me that you could get from one side of Wimbledon to the other without ever touching a road. Criminals could use golf courses, railway lines, alleyways, parks, of which Wimbledon had in abundance, to be able to move around Wimbledon without ever being detected. And for me, that was a massive breakthrough.
Could the prisoner's careless whisper be the key? Mick knows the locations of the burglaries. He understands the type of burglars he's faced with. But how can he use this intelligence to work out the criminal's escape route and catch them in the act? In our next case, a heat sealer is the final clue to bust an internet drug dealer. The police high-tech crime unit deals with serious online crimes. Trevor Dickey, one of their investigators, is about to get a job that will be groundbreaking.
We've had a briefing from some colleagues in Hertfordshire. They had received a financial disclosure on an individual, his bank account, and there was reference to a number of websites. It was very, very clearly related to drugs. He was identified as Sean Jackson.
Hertfordshire police call in Trevor to examine Jackson's suspicious online activity. And it's not long before he gets a sniff of what's going on.
Jackson appeared to dabble in quite a few websites. One was called Pepe's Page, as in the skunk Pepe Le Pew. skunk being a slang term for cannabis. We quickly established that what we were looking at here was online drugs trafficking. From a policing perspective, this is something we'd never seen before. It was the move from traditional street corner dealers selling small quantities of cannabis to a huge marketplace of the internet. Whilst we were dealing with cannabis, what we call a Class B drug, the big concern was this could open up the market to heroin, cocaine, real hardcore drugs, and the risk to the public was seen as a massive, massive concern.
This shocking new world of online drug dealing needs to be stopped before it spirals out of control. But it's a new domain for Trevor.
Our case was the first of its kind. Nobody in the UK had been prosecuted for drugs dealing on the internet.
Trevor's forced to think on his feet. First, he needs to check if the website's active and the goods are for real. So he places an order online.
We needed to obtain samples of those drugs. We conducted 3 separate test purchases using different payment methods. Within 2 days, we'd received in the post an A5-sized Jiffy envelope. Inside that was a vacuum-packed package which had been heat-sealed, and inside that was the drugs that we had purchased.
Trevor follows the money trail from his order into Jackson's bank account to prove they're connected. But that's not enough. So Trevor takes the investigation offline to see what his suspect's up to.
Here we are on a typical high street. This is the sort of area that Jackson would visit. You know, just looked like a man going about his business. Some of our surveillance found that he visited post offices regularly, posting large volumes of parcels. We realised the drugs would be packaged up in a heat-sealed bag, and then into the Jiffy envelope, and then posted out courtesy of Royal Mail.
Trevor's gut is telling him that Jackson is the supplier, posting out to anyone, young or old, at the click of a button on his website. But he still can't prove it.
We didn't have enough compelling evidence at the time to go and arrest him, because we might only get one shot at this. And I would rather take another 3 months to get that crucial piece of evidence that is absolutely going to nail that coffin shut.
Trevor has to show Jackson is handling the physical drugs. One location in particular makes him suspicious: his lockup garage.
This is the typical type of setup of the lockup garages that Jackson had access to, which is where we believe the drugs were being stored. We made the tactical decision to put a camera in place so that we could cover sort of the entry and exits and just get an idea of, you know, what Jackson was up to on a day-to-day basis.
The hidden camera monitors all the activity at the garage. Trevor's counting on the results.
When we downloaded the footage, we could see that Jackson would visit the lockup garage, but he would only be bringing sort of boxes out, so it didn't look like anything unusual. It didn't really give us, I think, that breakthrough moment that we were hoping for.
Trevor and his team have hit a brick wall, but to top it all, business on the website is booming. It's time to shut it down.
We decided then that the time was right to do our strike. We are going to carry out the arrests.
Trevor and his team arrest Jackson in Hertfordshire and raid his house for any evidence.
Searching the house, we did find computers, some Jiffy envelopes, the clear plastic bags that we knew the drugs were being put into. More importantly, we did find a vacuum pack heat sealing machine. Some people would use them in the catering industry to bag up things where you want to vacuum pack it, so for preservation of things. It has a perfectly legitimate commercial use, but an unusual item to have at your home. Which, when we asked Jackson about it, he said his girlfriend and him had used it to seal potpourri and candles, which brought a wry smile to my face.
The items are seized and the computer's examined. It throws up plenty of clues.
Our forensic examiners were able to recover the pictures that were used to build the website on Jackson's computer.
But Jackson denies it all.
Jackson was quite evasive and said, he had set up some websites for other people, but more than that, no involvement. So very much distanced himself from the online drugs trafficking.
Trevor isn't buying it. He's convinced Jackson's garage holds the answer to finding the drugs.
What we're now trying to establish is where are the drugs being kept, so that when it comes to executing the search warrant, we know exactly where we're hitting, and hopefully, we find that big load of drugs.
It's the moment Trevor's been waiting for. The last chance to finally link Jackson to the drug supply. But opening the garage, it's not to be.
What we found was disappointing. There were no drugs, but there was the paraphernalia connected to certainly the drugs trafficking, because we found the jiffy bags that were of a similar size and type to what we had gained evidentially.
With no drugs at the garage or at Jackson's house, Trevor needs to think outside the box to link Jackson to the crime.
We wanted to prove that Jackson had hands-on involvement of the actual drugs trafficking and running the website. We also wanted to prove that the drugs we had bought in our test purchase came from them, so the packaging that was used, the heat sealer, were simply sent off for testing with the Forensic Science Services.
It's Trevor's last hope. Can the heat sealer prove Jackson's a key online drug dealer?
The heat sealer, because it is a mechanical item, and when you seal the two pieces of plastic together through heat and pressure, the heat sealer has a unique mark, what we would call a tool mark. We had the Forensic Science Services look at a sample produced from the heat sealer that we seized from Jackson's house against the drugs that we had purchased.
Trevor has an anxious wait for the results. But it's a success. The heat seal is the key to cracking the case.
The heat seal for us was our, moment of proof that he was the man really in charge of this criminal enterprise. The tool mark produced from that heat sealer was an exact match for the packaging of the drugs that we had purchased some months previous.
The final piece of the puzzle was the heat sealer. And Jackson's locked up for over 4.5 years for supplying Class B drugs and profiting from drug trafficking.
This was the first prosecution of its kind. I was absolutely delighted with the sentences and the fact that we were able to take down a criminal enterprise and send a clear message. We will find you and we will prosecute you.
Back on the night shift, Detective Sergeant Mick Randall has got 3 individual burglars terrorizing different areas of Wimbledon, but they seem to vanish into thin air. Can a tip-off from a prisoner be the big break Mick needs?
What he basically said was that you could get from the top of Wimbledon Common all the way down to Collier's Wood, almost never crossing a road. There was only one thing for it. We had to put the helicopter up. I needed aerial shots of all of the areas of interest just to understand the labyrinth of alleyways and open areas. I wanted to see how they connected and how we could actually police those areas and create a really clever spider's web where we could catch our burglars.
Translating the prisoner's intel onto a map with the aerial photos, Mick is suddenly able to clearly see the escape routes used by the criminals. It's the turning point in the investigation.
I remember feeling elated. That was a real moment of truth there, because we knew what was happening at night time.
It's Mick's eureka moment. He's no longer in the dark and can plot how the elusive criminals are using the network of open spaces and alleyways to avoid getting caught. Now he can move forward to catch them.
It was a big thing at the time. It just dawned on me what needed to be done now.
Mick works out precisely where to deploy his team to stake out and contain his first criminal, the smash and grab type burglar.
The areas that we were looking at was an extensive area that really started off on the east side of Wimbledon.
To pull it off, Mick requires a huge team working all night. He needs to get a result, but will using the intelligence and map actually be the key to catching the criminals?
The first 2 weeks didn't go as well as planned. Burglaries did occur. They were outside of the area, which was tremendously disheartening. I was questioning myself privately whether I was doing the right thing.
Mick perseveres.
It was the third week we were in position, and in the dead of night, exactly as we had expected, there was an almighty crash. A window had gone in somewhere. The uniform and the dogs made a garden by garden search, and he was found hiding in one of the gardens and arrested. Michael Farr was our shock and awe burglar. He was in his early 20s and was an addict. He was after that handbag in the kitchen, really for the next fix. I was over the moon. A massive sigh of relief that what we were doing was right.
One down, 2 to go. But after the arrest of Michael Farr, Mick's under pressure to pull it off again. His next challenge is using the network of streets to trap and contain the ninja, or balaclava-wearing burglar.
This was a tough one. We would need to change our stakeout. We would need to be off-road and in the houses.
Residents in the surrounding streets let Mick and his team camp out in their homes so they're ready to pounce. After a long 2-week wait, they get the 999 call.
We had a burglar right in the middle of our spider's web. I couldn't understand how the burglar had got to the house, wherever it was, without us seeing them. And I put the call over to go radio silent, and basically we just listened. My heart was pounding, there's no doubt about that. And then all of a sudden, one of the team put up a shout, as we would say in the police, that he was chasing suspects. He was chasing him down this alleyway. They started moving in, and within minutes, we had our man. One of the police officers pulled off the balaclava. He was a very well-known burglar in the area at the time, Philip Trapp, and he actually lived in Dorset Road, and that's really why we didn't see him come into our spider's web, because he actually lived in it, right in the centre of it.
Success. Number 2, Philip Trapp, is arrested. But now the team have a bigger problem to face. The last burglar uses the vast expanse of Wimbledon Common to access some of the most exclusive roads in the area. Can Mick's method still work?
We had a good idea who was committing the burglaries, and that was an individual called Jason Edwards. And for us to catch him, we would need to control Wimbledon Common. We went to the scientists at Metropolitan Police, asked them what kit they might be able to help us with. Here we have a normal laser. However, they had infrared beams that we were able to put across the common. So therefore, when someone crossed that and broke the connection, we were alerted that someone was coming into our spider's web.
Now armed with infrared booby traps, camouflage and night vision, they're ready to catch their suspect, a well-known prolific burglar.
We staked out Wimbledon Common and many of the surrounding roads that backed onto the common for 2 weeks, but without any joy. It was now getting pretty gutty, and I needed to find another solution.
Forced to take a different tack, Mick digs through some old records and finds a current vehicle registration for Edwards.
When we put that registration mark into the computer, we saw that the vehicle was going in the early hours of the morning across London and Tower Bridge. And that was a real turning point for the whole investigation. He was driving up and using his vehicle as a starting point to set out across the common and to commit the burglaries. All we needed to do was catch that vehicle having committed a burglary in the area.
Using the police national computers, Mick's able to track Jason's car. Now, instead of staking out the burglar on the common, he sets up his team to trap Edwards' vehicle instead. They don't have long to wait.
A burglary occurred. We alerted the City of London Police that a vehicle with this registration mark could be coming towards Tower Bridge. They didn't disappoint. They arrested Edwards as he was going over Tower Bridge. So he had been born and bred in Wimbledon, and that's why he knew the area he was burgling so well.
After a year of chaos, Mick's determination, lateral thinking, and a careful chat with a prisoner puts the 3 burglars safely behind bars. And the residents of Wimbledon feel safe once again.
We had set out 2 months earlier to arrest 3 very difficult criminals. Through a lot of hard work and some great teamwork and the help of the Wimbledon residents, we were able to catch all 3. It's just one of those highs in a 30-year police career. It's just one of those moments that you'll always remember.